In the 18th century, plaster castings were used by stone carvers to communicate ideas between themselves and between the continents. So in this episode, we'll be showing some of my examples that I've carved from original pieces, as well as use 18th century source material to show other stonecutters and how they were using the downtime in their shop to produce plaster castings. So stay tuned.
My trust, O Lord, in thee I have put evermore. Oh, let me never take the soil, nor shrink for shame therefore, but for thy
So here's an advertisement from 1768, the Boston Postboy newspaper, by stonecutter Henry Christian Geyer. So I won't read all of this, but what's interest for this video is the said Geyer has thought it necessary to erect the art of fusor simulacrorum, or the making of all sorts of images, birds, cats, dogs, and etc., and all sorts of curious animals, all of plaster of Paris. He has opened a shop opposite the South Fish Market, where constant attendance is given and where gentlemen and ladies may depend upon being well used. The said animals will be sold reasonable for cash only. So Henry Christian Geyer is starting the art of fusor simulacrorum, or making plaster of Paris castings of his carvings. So this would have been done in the off season, or when stone cutting was going slow. So this shows that we have a precedent from the 18th century to make plaster castings of our stone carvings, as Mr. Henry Christian Geyer was a stone carver, stone cutter near Liberty Tree at the south end of Boston in 1768. So a period plaster casting would have looked similar to this. This is an example of one that I've carved from an original from the 1730s of a death's head. So the casting would have been just solid white, like this one here, and it would have shown up many of the details of the stonecutter's mallet and chisel, such as these striations as mine do here. So the period plaster casting would have looked similar to that. So what I've done is I've taken that idea and developed it. It's just still the same plaster casting, but I've distressed it and aged it a little bit so that there's no need for a cross light to display these on the wall. So here's that same death's head with a little darkening done to it so you can see better contrast. So this is a 1730s Lamson death's head plaster casting. And we also have the ability to make the plaster castings in a dark gray slate color and distress it, such as this one here, which gives you a variety to choose from if you prefer one or the other. So we have these for sale. They're $39.99 plus shipping. I'll put a link in the description below to purchase these. Another casting that I've done in the recent past is this one of Mr. Thomas Poole from Charleston, South Carolina. This one was carved in 1754. Mr. Poole was a sea captain and he was shipwrecked, and we saw this image on the top of his stone carved by Henry Ems. So I carved my own copy and made it a little smaller to make it more portable, and made the casting from that. So on this one we have the recumbent skeleton, which you see in some of the Roman stones from the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. And then we have the ever-present symbol of the hourglass with wings that shows that, of course, time flies. Then we have this quote. It says, "Yesterday for me, and today for thee." The last E is just behind his teeth here, and it's almost as if death has arrested this man from speaking forever. So this is another casting that I have for sale. This one is $19.99. And I'll put links for this one as well as the others in the description below. Okay, another casting I have to offer is the Join or Die. This one is Benjamin Franklin's political cartoon of 1758. And of course this one was never carved in stone, but it's such an interesting and beautiful picture of our resistance to Great Britain that I just had to carve it. And what I think is most interesting is, I suppose by my accent you can tell I'm not from here or here, but from South Carolina. So South Carolina makes the rattle of the tail of this serpent that we need to join or die. I thought this was a fascinating one. This one is also $20, $19.99, and I'll place a link for it in the description below as well. I'd like to also issue a word of warning. All the castings in the video that I have shown to you are carvings that I have done personally. I do not endorse going out into cemeteries and making castings of original stones, as you could easily ruin them. This is a carving that I've done just specifically for casting, and when you pour the silicone over top of the image, it will literally impregnate the surface of that stone with silicone, and when I peel it away, it still has a layer of silicone that seeps into the pores of each stone. So it literally will ruin the stone that I'm making the casting from. So all of the castings that I have done are castings that are specifically for casting, and all the carvings I've done are specifically for casting. I do not recommend going and making any casting of any current tombstone out in any cemetery, please. And if you're wondering how to hang these things or display them, on the back of each casting I have a little niche that I have worked in that you can use to just drive a nail in the wall or a screw with a large head, and it will fit conveniently upon that without any trouble, and it'll hold up a large amount of weight. Here's another one you can see. Those work very well for that purpose. Those little niches on the back. You can of course just sit it on top of a bookshelf or a shelf as well. The death's head is a universal symbol that you see carved a lot in American gravestones from the 1670s up until the 1750s. It was just a universal symbol of mortality, and you would see it on gravestones of infants all the way up to preachers or to old grandmothers. And it didn't mean, like I suppose when I was a child, that this person was a pirate or died of the plague or anything, or they were wicked. Quite to the contrary. It was a symbol in many senses carved by Christians to show that we are not going to live forever, and our bodies won't live forever on this earth. And so each of these castings that I carve come with a historical card that explains the history of each of these and make great gifts. The death's head fell out of favor by the 1750s and were replaced by more subjects that weren't of such a morbid nature. You would see angels and cherubs and things like that, but this was the predominant symbol on your gravestones from the 1670s all the way up to about 1750. Each of my castings comes with a little historic description card that tells the history of that particular piece, like this one for example. And we've been blessed enough by the Lord to have Colonial Williamsburg now sell these castings in their gift shops. So if you're in the neighborhood of Colonial Williamsburg, please go and check them out there as well. You can actually see them and pick them up and see what you think about them. We would be greatly appreciative if you would subscribe to this channel if material of this nature seems to be of interest to you. Please feel free to like or share or make comments and ask questions, as this is an interesting subject to me. I love to talk about it. I love to talk about anything, but especially about gravestone stuff. So please ask those questions. I'd love to chat with you. So I thank you for watching. This is just a less expensive way for you to own a piece of Americana, a gravestone art. and it certainly is more convenient, as you can own these symbols without having to be deceased yourself. So, this is your neighborhood gravestone carver, David Gillespie, saying, next time, we hope to see you out in the cemetery.